know, I'm Christy Grossman. I'm the CEO and founder of OpsBoss Coaching. And welcome to this edition, our first 2025 Coffee with Christy and Crew. And actually today I'm bringing you two of my favorite crew. While we're waiting for people to jump on, I'm going to give you our upcoming calendar for those of you who are looking to grow. How many of you are looking to grow in 2025? I want all those hands up. Awesome. So we have a fantastic class. Our first virtual class of the year is January 30th. It's called Tactically a Boss. And this is an amazing class taught by our ops boss at Ops Boss Coaching. So it's super, super bossy. So anyone, and this may apply to you or other operations people on your team, anyone who is on the newer end and feeling like everything feels urgent, and how do I know what's most important, and I can't get all the things done, this class is for you. Anyone who is leading an operations team and you onboard other operations people onto your team, this class is for you. And if you've been in the business maybe 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and you just really need to go reset your foundation so that you can move to the next level in your career, this class is for you. So that's January 30th. February 20th, we have the launch of our academy, our first session for this year. It's a 10-week boot camp and basically a deep dive of the concepts that we cover in Tactically a Boss. But it's very practical, hands-on, with homework, with a workbook and all the things so that you can level up. And then February 26th, we have Rock Referrals Like a Boss. This class is for agents and admin, people who want to earn money through referrals, but you're not sure how to do it. People who are maybe, I don't want to be salesy, I don't want to be that person. So Jerrica and I built this class around the way we generated over $100,000 a year in GCI ourselves personally as admin on a real estate team. I was not even licensed when I did that. Didn't earn income from it. I should have been licensed, but that's an awesome class. So that's what's coming up. Let's start with today. We are going to talk about the KPIs of operations. And I want to introduce you to two of our coaches, Jerrica Kontos and Hannah Perkey, and let them take it away. So Jerrica, let's meet you.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to be here. So I am Jerrica Kontos. I am a coach, consultant, and trainer with OpsBoss Coaching. I'm also the director of operations for our real estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. So speaking of referrals, you can send your referrals for Connecticut and Rhode Island there. And I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome, Hannah.
Hey, I'm Hannah Perkey. I'm CEO of Evelo team with Keller Williams Realty, serving Central Indiana for all your referrals here. And I'm also an Ops Boss coach for one-on-one coaching clients.
Okay, awesome. Jerrica, I'm going to let you take it away. We're starting the year off with this class because I know a lot of you have already set your goals for this year, but what we see across the board is a lot of, I kind of have concepts of where I want to be, or our team has a business plan and where we want to be, but I'm not sure how do I actually break that down into specific, measurable, achievable, results-oriented, time-bound goals. And what are the key performance indicators that show me whether I'm achieving those goals? So I asked Hannah and Jerrica to lead this. I'm actually going to jump off the call and let them lead it because they are our two coaches who not only are doing this themselves, but coaching their clients at a really high level how to do it. And I want to say kudos to Aaron, by the way. Aaron has volunteered to share some of his goals and business plan with our coaches so they can use some real specifics to talk you through. And I'm going to invite you guys to unmute, ask questions, post in the chat, and get what you need from our coaches today so that you can crush 2025. So have a great conversation, guys.
Awesome. Well, as Christy said, I don't know if any of you guys have ever taken my classes, but you know they are never a lecture, always a conversation. So welcome all of your interaction in the chat. Let's jump in. What do you guys define as KPIs? Who can define a KPI for me? What does that mean? What does it stand for?
Key performance index.
Yeah, it's a key performance indicator. And so we're gonna, oh, go ahead, Aaron.
Right. I was going to say something that's going to move you forward in your business.
Yeah.
So a task or a project or something that you can quantify that can help your team or company just progress.
Love it. Love it. Look at you, Erin.
That's a really good
my
coach,
wonderful
apparently.
coach. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Erin. Hannah.
I said he has a really good coach, apparently, getting all that data in his head. I love it.
Love it. Yeah, so exactly right, right? The key performance indicators tell us what we need to do every day, every week, every month to win and reach our goals. So there's a couple different ways. Really, they're metrics for us to figure out if we're getting traction on the direction that we're going in. And so if you really break them down, typically our KPIs, there's two different versions of KPIs that we can have. We can have a leading indicator as one of our KPIs. So that's something I want you to think about that as the front half of a process. And we're going to go through this a ton in a bunch of different ways today. Then there's our lagging indicators. Our lagging indicators tend to be a result of the leading indicators. Okay, so I want you guys to think of it that way. There's two different ways that we can really break that down. And one specific example of that, we all know a sales pipeline, right? So one of our KPIs that we might track in a sales pipeline is number of appointments. Well, if we really want to understand the earliest indicator of our business, what we want to be tracking is new leads. So that would be a leading indicator. Appointments would be a lagging indicator. So they're really about the smallest and earliest measurement that you guys can get. That's really the difference between the leading and lagging. And it's really, again, measuring that what happens and what is the result that comes from it. So both of those can be KPIs.
So why do you guys think it's important to measure leading and lagging? Like, why can't we just measure lagging if that's telling us we hit the goal?
Because then it's too late.
On the activity to make sure you've got enough to support the lagging.
Yes. Yeah. So one of the things we'll talk about today is really in goal setting. Probably a lot of you guys, your teams, and we're going to look at Aaron's have set up business plans. And so throughout that quarter, if we say every quarter, we're going to stop and evaluate how those are progressing with the lagging indicators. Throughout the 90 days, we want to know, like, do we need to tweak something? Is it enough? Is it too much, etc.? So those leading help us to kind of know the pathway that our ship's going and if we need to tweak anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Hannah, can you tell us a little bit about, so Hannah and I had an awesome conversation about KPIs. We could have talked for about 1,000,000 years, I think, but we kept it as short as we could with the two of us. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're using your KPIs for accountability on your team?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things Jerrica said is they help to tell if we're winning. And one of the things we hope to accomplish with those of you on here is to help your team have them, but also help them implement for your own position. Right now, my ops team has what we call a scorecard, which is from the book Traction, if you've ever read that. It's something I brought over from corporate. We had read it there. And so with that, each person has their KPI that we're tracking. One of the important things with KPIs is we want to know if we are red light or green lighting it, right? Like there's no question mark. Did we hit it? I'm not sure. And so it can't be something based on a gut feeling. Typically, it has to be a measurable, like, number of something or a yes, no. And so we have them put that in there. And then that's something I can take to our owners and say, hey, here's this new role we implemented for marketing. And we said that we wanted to increase our followers on social media by 25 people per month. And here's the results. And it's green, 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 right? Like that then solidifies that for them. And it helps us to put facts over feelings. So my guess is some of you guys have been in positions where maybe the person that you report to is like, hey, I just don't really like this anymore. I don't feel like it's doing a good job. How many of you have had that experience where they just come out of the blue and they're like, I just don't think it's where I want it to be? Yeah. And so this gives us the facts to say it is performing, or no, you're absolutely correct, it's not performing, right? And so the KPIs can help us measure that piece. It also is a quick accountability piece. So whether you're reporting it to someone or someone's reporting to you, I love to just take a quick look on Friday and be like, where's my scorecard? How's that stuff doing? My agents turn in their numbers. I can scan through that and see. And so it just gives me a quick view of what's happening. And it's getting people in the mindset of, can I measure my job results, right? Am I doing stuff that's impactful, or am I getting stuck in the nitty-gritty all day? So we want every single team member to know how they're impacting the results. So I want my virtual assistant in the Philippines to know how she is impacting us hitting our goal as a team. And to do that, part of that way is through KPIs for her specific job.
And I think one of the things that you just said, Hannah, that's so important is this is an amazing framework that you guys can use. So framework is one of the things that we're going to be like really talking about today, like specifically how do you build a KPI? Because how many of you guys feel like you can track a KPI? Anyone feel like their tracking is pretty okay? They're pretty good, right? That's like the easy part. What about actually coming up with the KPI itself? That's the hard part, right? So she just gave you one really important structure or framework that you can use to build your KPI. You can ask yourself, is this a yes or no question? Right? If it's not a yes or a no, and it's not easily tracked as a yes or a no, that can tell you right there if it's the right KPI or if it is a KPI.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
Hannah, how do you start with your framework? Where's your starting place for when you're setting KPIs for your team?
Absolutely. So first is your business plan for the year. So we talked about a ship, and if we know if we're going in the right direction, so we need to know the destination for that ship. So ideally, it's a 5-year plan. Jerrica's great at creating that with groups. That's one of her specialties. So if your team doesn't have any plan, it's saying let's at least get 12 months out. And in the future, let's get the 5-year plan. That gives us an idea of what is important to us. Then we want to figure out what are the pieces of that plan. So one of the plans that is out there is called a 1-3-5 or a GPS. And the reason I bring this one up is because in this, you have your one overall goal. So for most businesses, it's a production goal of some sort, sales volume, whatever that may be. And then 3 different strategies or focuses within the business. That could be for a real estate team. It could be leads, listings, leverage. It could be for lead gen, we're going to do database, and we're really good at farming, and we're going to do FSBOs. And then you break those down. And typically when you break those down, you start to find some things that could be tracked, right? If you said database is a focus for us, and how do we get more database? Is it through effective client events? Is it through more reviews so that we can get more referrals? Those are things we can start to track. But one of the things that we want to be mindful of, Jerrica and I were talking about this in our prep call, is there's a lot of things we can track. Have you guys ever experienced that? Like if you're in real estate, some of you might not be in real estate. Sometimes I think with the agents, there's like 75 things I could track. And sometimes I feel guilty, like I'm not, like for my team, I've been with them 9 years. We don't capture appointments set to health. Why not? It's just because it's never made it to the top of our list. So shame on me, but it also has not been one of our main KPIs in our business plan. So it's really good for you to know, like, what are the top KPIs? It doesn't mean we never get to the others, but what are the most important for you to start tracking that would influence you hitting your business plan? So if database is it, and you say, hey, we believe that it's the number of people in our database, then you're going to start tracking ads, and then you can start tracking whatever your lagging indicator is, right? But we will start to figure out what are those numbers to keep it simple to start tracking. So maybe you have 6 KPIs you start with this year for your GPS. Then we're going to look at who owns it, right? So you should not own everything. That's the default, is that we're like, yes, I'm going to make all these things happen. I'm going to implement all of these new systems. And so I want to challenge you guys, if you leave here and you say, I have a business plan, I know what we're focused on, and you can maybe work with your manager to come up with some of the KPIs as we talk through those. I want to challenge you to assign them to people on your team. And I believe one of my coaching clients is on here, and she's like, it's really scary because now this person's responsible for it, and I don't know if they will make it happen. That's true. That is delegation. That's developing you as a leader to put that out there, but it also changes the conversations. In the past, when I've presented my GPS and I'm like, here's how we're tracking, here's the numbers, it's like glaze over because it's just data being fed to them. But if they're part of the story, it gives them the opportunity to be part of the success and the conversations throughout the year about what needs to change. The other thing is, how are you tracking it and how are you looking at it? So it doesn't become ancillary. So one of our big things is doing 411s. And I was talking to another coaching client today about this. It can become a document, right? A business plan can become a document that's sitting to the side. So you need to figure out where you put your KPIs. I think a good Google spreadsheet's great. Jerrica, you probably use like some jot forms and things like that.
Yeah, we have a hustle board. So we call it a daily hustle board.
Oh.
So it goes, that's what we had on my previous team. That's what we have on our team now. So every single person's KPIs are reported through jot forms into a spreadsheet, and it gets emailed out to everybody every day. But it's like
Love it.
in a cute graphic so that agents want to open it.
I think that's awesome. And I know some of the CRMs out there will do that for you.
Mhm.
We're in Brevity, and now they're allowing us to add like custom things to track.
Yeah.
You might have that in Sisu where you can add the custom things. And so for my ops people, we're in a spreadsheet, and I literally go through and like green and red it myself every Friday. So once you have that, we need a system for getting people to input to it. I'd highly encourage, if you don't use like auto email, auto reminders, to do that. Every Friday, everyone on my team gets a reminder to fill out whatever their metric is. It's not a perfect system, right? But it's pretty annoying. And so I feel like I have a good success rate of like, it's in there, and most of them are going to fill it out because they've been used to it. We've made it into a habit over the years. So I want to encourage you, joke about it, keep reminding them. I actually sent out last Friday, I said, guys, I hope I'm part of your New Year's resolution to fill out your form. And I got everybody's because I joked with them about that. So I'm going to keep pushing and helping to recreate the habit for them to put the data in there.
And that's where, actually, if I can interrupt, Anna, that's where I love the daily hustle board, because the thing that holds them accountable is that they don't want to show up with no numbers every day, right? Like they don't want to have the email go out with zero reporting for them and straight reds across their entire base, right? They're like, oh, I don't want that. So they will input their numbers because they don't want to be the one that is blank.
I love that too, because we've put ours on our team agenda. And I've had agents like walk in and just, we don't really talk much about it, but it's on there. They'll flip it over and they'll look to see like what it says, because they care about that from that piece, right? And it's really like proving what they're doing. So I think that's great. And then the other piece is, how are you checking on it? How are you talking about it? And so I would recommend that you guys are looking at it weekly, and that's impacting then what you need to communicate out to others. If you were kind of over the KPIs, or KPIs, I'm guessing you are because you're on this call, that you're looking at it weekly and saying, okay, I need to talk to this person because they're lagging. I need to really congratulate this person because they're killing it. And then on at least a monthly basis to talk to leadership to say, here's what we've seen, here's what we've done. What do we need to do for the next month? And that can be, if you guys have heard Christy talk about state of the company, that can be a great part to integrate to your state of the company, which is basically a overarching report that you give to leadership to inform them of how the company's performing.
Totally. And I think too, for me, it always, kind of going back to the beginning of where I always start with the strategy. Like, yes, the business plan, but like, what are the strategies that we're going to implement to actually get to the business plan, get to that specific goal? And one of the questions that I like to ask myself, I'm really big on asking questions I like to build structures for how I can do things. Because that holds me accountable to doing it in a specific and consistent way. And some of the questions that I ask myself when I'm looking at a strategy is, how can every single person on this team make an impact on this strategy? And so if we can use an example of that, so let's go back to Hannah's example of wanting to increase the conversion of their database, right? What is a different metric that each person on the team can have? And some people may say, well, where does operations fall into that? Well, the operations falls into that for keeping the database clean, right? So like, what percentage of contacts have complete contact information? How many contacts got new complete contact information? The director of operations, if they're planning their events, are they making sure that we're collecting all information that we need from people for people to register for our events? Or are we just letting them show up? Right? So there's different things and metrics that you guys can put in there to make sure that every single person can own a piece of it. Agents, their responsibility is when they open a contact, they see it has the incomplete tag. They want to make sure that the database is clean and full too, so that they can get all of the marketing to their contacts in all the three ways, right? Phone calls, emails, phone calls, emails, mailers. They want to make sure that all three of those things, they can get hit in all of those ways, so they have the complete plans being used. So they see the incomplete tag. Now they want to add complete contact information to the database, right? So that's how everybody can kind of own little pieces of it and work together. People like the transaction coordinator, are they updating the database at the end of a transaction so that we have the updated address? If somebody bought a new property, is their new property being put in? Are sellers having their old address removed and their new address being put in? That would be them asking the seller for a new address, right? That could be a KPI that you can track. How many new seller addresses did you get this month? So that's an example of like how you can identify how every single person on the team can own a piece of a strategy. So really try to think about the strategy in 360 degrees. How can every single seat on the team contribute to this effort that we're making?
Absolutely. One other thing I'll add too, because I want to be mindful that some of you might sit in a job that does not have a business plan for this year. So if you don't, I would encourage you to just schedule some time with whoever is your manager or the owner of that organization and just do some like dreaming with them. You may have heard Christy does some visioning activities, but really saying like, if we're sitting here in 5 years and life's amazing, tell me about what the business looks like. Help them break that down. That's something that we as ops people, I think, have a lot of ability to do, is to cut it into smaller pieces. From there, once you can determine like, here's where we need to be in 12 months, go and look at your top lead sources. So any business that you're in, real estate or not, look at your top 3 lead sources. If you don't know how your leads are coming in, that's a good place to start, is to make that a project for Q1. But if you know your top 3 lead sources, instead of going after new things, say, how can we get better at these 3 things, and start to make that your business plan for this year. That'll be a great starting place.
Yeah, and even don't be afraid to just start tracking on your own imperfectly. Any tracking of KPIs or anything, right? You could just take any sales conversion, any sales metric. If you don't have a business plan, start with the sales metrics that you guys might need, right? Like Hannah's saying, is somebody tracking lead sources? Is somebody tracking the number of leads that are coming in, the number of appointments that people are going on? Any of those kind of things that you guys are doing in your sales business, are those being tracked? Start there. Then you can worry about 10xing it to making sure everybody has them.
Absolutely. And you can use it personally too. So I am a nerd and I love my spreadsheets. So like if you guys have ever wanted to lose weight, we might track like calorie count is our leading and our lagging as if the scales say that it's down, right? So any of those things in your life, I see lots of posts at the end of the year about how many books people have read. So any of those things that are really important to you, these same concepts apply. And I think it's really fun to red light, green light it. So I'd encourage you guys to figure out if this is something you want to integrate into that part of your goal setting as well.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so smart. I didn't even think about it from a personal perspective too, because I actually track KPIs in my personal life, which I'm sure everybody is shocked about. Even my dog tracks his KPIs. He went to 52 new places in 2024.
I love it.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So are we ready for our hot seat? It's not going to be that scary. We're making it sound scarier than it is. But what we really want to do is be able to show you guys in action with some real life examples, what this could look like for you, right? So we've given you a few examples already. Now let's kind of dig in. So Erin, you sent over your 135 business plan for us, which is amazing. So a couple different priorities and strategies that you have on here that I thought could be fun to kind of break down for everybody. I'd really love to dig into some of your recruiting, and I'd love to dig into some of your retention. How many of you guys are working on either recruiting or retention this year? Drop in the chat if you are. Yes, lots of recruiting and retention this year. So before we jump into Erin's specific plan, let's talk a little bit about the specific KPIs that you guys can use just in the whole recruiting process. So I was actually having this conversation with one of my coaching clients earlier, right? There's a difference between the recruiting process, which is getting the names before any interviews happen. And the second part of the process is the hiring process. Right? So those are actually 2 separate versions, not dissimilar from a sales pipeline, right? Where you have your lead generation process and your lead conversion process. So I want you guys to remember there's that break in the middle. You want to have some KPIs in the front that are your leading indicators to get you to the end goal of your hire. And then there are KPIs on the other half of the process that'll get you, again, to that hire. So without the front end will be some of the strategies, right? The actual hiring itself, although teams have different processes and different, systems and ways that they go through and bring candidates through determining if they're right for their team, a lot of the metrics are likely the same. So I can assume that some KPIs, can someone throw out a couple of KPIs in the chat that they would use for the hiring process? I'll give you guys an example. How about number of applicants? right? That can be a leading indicator in your hiring process is number of applicants. So that's the number of people who actually applied for the position. Number of interviews scheduled, exactly. Yep. Maybe you guys have your number of ads posted across number of platforms. Totally. Absolutely. I would say that maybe there's you guys might have different portions of your process, right? So you may have applicants, you may have phone screenings, and you may have an in-person interview. So each of those can also become KPIs as well. That will help you guys. Now, how you're going to use that information is one, you'll have a sense of if you're trending up or you're trending down, which will tell you if your first part of the system is working. This is where we're going to get into why our leading indicators are important for our lagging indicators, right? But if all of a sudden your number of phone screenings tanks, right? What are you guys going to do? You're going to go back to your leading indicators and say, what can I fix in my leading indicators to get the number of phone screenings back up in a good direction so that I can actually get somebody on board? Okay, so what are so Erin, this is where we're going to put you in the hot seat. So can you tell us what some of your, so I see that you have referrals, events as a couple of your strategies for recruiting. Can you pick one and tell us about it?
So one of our biggest recruiting strategies is our Launchpad training. It's a 4-week training that we offer to essentially any agent, doesn't matter what brokerage they're with. And we post it everywhere. We allow people to come in. They can come in physically. It's also on Google Meet. So they just have to be a Texas agent, essentially. And that's a big recruiting piece for us because it lets people see kind of behind the scenes of our team, but then also decide if they want to join potentially, or switch brokerages or switch teams or anything. So it's a good way to get agents in and kind of see what we're about.
Love it.
So, Erin, right now, how are you guys advertising that event? Like, are you counting the amount of people? Is it new people that are licensed? What's that look like?
We advertise it to new and experienced agents. It's through Facebook ads, Instagram ads. We do a Eventbrite. So we're doing it on multiple platforms, LinkedIn, just kind of all kinds of places. Any place that we can put it, we'll put it. And then we link it back to just kind of like our registration page, which tracks, gets all our contact information. Then we have a spreadsheet that we have for every single member or person that signed up. And then we track each individual day that we have for the event, if they came online or if they came in person. So we have a total amount of people that attended the event and then, registered but didn't attend, but then we can kind of track how many on average they attended. So it kind of gives us a better idea of how we're doing, I guess, drawing people into.
Love that.
That already exists, right? You're already doing that. It sounds like pretty well.
Yeah, we've done it 3 times now. We've done the launch pad like 4 or 5 times now.
Okay.
We're planning to do it every quarter, essentially.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. So for 2025, is it just more frequently? Is it just the continuation of it as it relates to hitting your goals?
Yeah, so last year we did it 3 times. This year we're planning to do it 4 times. Also, we require all of our new agents to go through it. So we have an online version that they do with our team leaders, and then they do the in-class portion all the way through. So they're basically doing it twice to kind of really hammer home like all of the things that we want our agents to do.
So go ahead, Hannah.
Oh, I was just going to ask about metrics. Is that what you're going to check on?
Yeah.
I feel like Jerrica might know a little bit more. So
I know. I'm like ready. I'm like, all right, Erin.
So Erin, right now, have you guys had a leading and lagging KPI for it or not necessarily? I know you're tracking stuff. It's just, are you looking at it regularly? Probably.
Not really. I think we started off with maybe 10 to 15 agents either on the team or going through. Last time we did it, we had on average 25 people per day coming through, whether online or in person. So we are kind of tracking that, but we're not necessarily setting a KPI for it or anything in specifically. I think we kind of wanted like that initial number, like what's kind of like our average coming in, what's good, what's bad, we don't really know. And we don't really see a lot of other people doing that. particular
Yeah.
event. So it's kind of new for not necessarily the industry, but just kind of for this area. So it's kind of a new process, honestly.
Sure. I love it. Do you know how many agents you've onboarded from those 3 sessions?
Um, Not specifically, but I know we have the last time. I think we onboarded about 4 or 5 agents from there. But
Okay.
that definitely is something that we should track.
Yeah, yeah. And that would be the lagging, right? Of like, if is the result working? So it sounds like there's many leading you could
Mhm.
potentially track and are tracking. And so it sounds like attendance could be one. If we said, okay, for every 25 people that attend, 5 people on board, then it sounds like Aaron could calculate what attendance he would need in order to hit his agent count goal, right? Is that making sense to everyone? Now, Aaron, if we wanted to go back and review the 3 from last year, could we backtrack and figure out which agents onboarded from the event or not necessarily have that data available?
Yeah, I think we've been tracking the registrants and like who attended for the last 3 times.
Okay.
So we probably can go back and pull those numbers and see how it's increased or if it's increased. I mean, I know it has, but yeah.
Yeah. I think sometimes with KPIs, when you guys create them, we might not have the background of where we were coming from. So we either can say, is there some data in the market that can pull from, like database conversion? There's the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book that gives us a number that we can pull from. If there's not data, we can say, can we go back and quickly pull the data? We don't want to spend too much time calculating that, but can we go back and figure out lead sources to no lead conversion? Can we go back and calculate how many agents onboarded from this? And if not, we can just say, well, let's set a goal. We'll measure it for 90 days and see if that goal needs to go up or down.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's where that's where a lot of people I think find themselves, right? Is in that place where they're like, I don't have the information to know if this is the right thing or the wrong thing. That's the beautiful thing about KPIs is that will give you more direction to make decisions on if you guys are going in the right direction. And so you may not have the information up front, but can you track it for 30 days? And then at 60 days, was it higher or lower than the 30 days? And at 90 days, was it higher or lower than the 30 days, right? And you can use that as a barometer of which, if you're scaling up or you're scaling down in a specific strategy that you're doing, that can help you guys press. So don't necessarily worry about hitting a specific target of a number. I like to look week over week, month over month, just to kind of look at it from that perspective to say, what direction are we headed, up or down? Because that'll tell you, do I have to change something in my programming? Do I have to change the advertising? Then you can start to go back and track the specific numbers and say, okay, did we get less people in this session than we did last time? Maybe it's getting a little saturated because we're running it too often. Maybe we're not marketing it in enough places. That's when you can then start to introduce additional KPIs, right, in the leading phase to figure out if you're implementing strategies, like really maximizing the strategies, right? So if you're saying we've hit a plateau, okay, what can we do to maximize this strategy for the third quarter? We've been spot on for Q1 and Q2. What can we do to blow it out of the park for the fourth quarter to set us up for success in 2026? Can we add another place that we're going to do ads? Can we, are we doing drip campaigns to the people who attended but didn't sign on with our team already? Right? What are the other things that you can introduce to kind of spider off of this one strategy that you're already doing successfully?
Absolutely. Okay. So, Aaron, looking at your goal of agent count, the gap you're trying to close, which of these strategies do you think will be most impactful? Is there one that you feel like is carrying the weight, or is it, hey, I need a little bit from all the areas?
I think we kind of need a little bit from all the areas. I definitely think the launch pad is a big one because it draws in the most people, like in person. Uh, I don't really know. We do get things to like Facebook ads and stuff like that, but it's not like a significant portion. It may bring on a couple agents every year, whereas the launch pad will bring in the bulk of them.
Okay, so when we talk about simplifying KPIs, that was one of the notes I had is you have a lot on here and all of them I think are really great. But if we say Aaron's going to spend his time measuring like how many contacts are sent out for launch, then how many people attend, then how many people convert, takes a lot of time and effort. And so maybe the others exist, or maybe you create KPIs for each of those if there's someone else that can own those areas, right? And I don't know how your business is made up, but Maybe you have a director of sales over onboarding, and you can have agents onboarded, agents that made it through 90 days, right? If you're leading and lagging KPI for that.
Yep.
And I think if agents are dropping off in the onboarding process, let's dig into this aspect of it a little bit. If agents are dropping off into the onboarding process, what is the next step for that? Where do you guys go? How can you find a KPI or use a KPI to leverage what direction to go in? Because we assume that the direction is you want to go towards more people sticking through the onboarding process, right? So you guys aren't wasting time. What's a strategy or KPI that you guys could implement to make sure, what can you do when you have that trend happening to go back and fix the problem? Sure, attendance before onboarding, for sure, right? It could be something in your hiring process that you're not catching. It could be something in, why are they leaving? Let's find out why they're leaving and see if we can get that fixed. And then how can we set, not to go KPI crazy, right? But that could be something that you implement for the next year, maybe, or the next quarter. That's how you guys are going to get deep on these strategies that you're doing. When Hannah's talking about simplifying and she's saying, if we picked one, how could we get really deep going down as far as we could to really blow this one thing out of the water and really squeeze every drop out of it so that we're not spinning 50 plates in our business. We're only focused on spinning two or three, and they're going to get us where we want to go. Right? So great. Why are they leaving? Where is it in the hiring process? Do we not have the right value proposition? Is our onboarding system correct? Are we providing them with the right training? Were there red flags that they were a cultural fit for us? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Do they not have their license? And they said that they had their license and they were going to get it by the time they were done onboarding, right? There could be something that you could tweak or fix. And that KPI, that one KPI of number of agents that convert, who start the onboarding process and finish the onboarding, can trigger that entire layer of solutions that you guys can come up with for your business.
Yeah, I love that question. Why are they leaving? Because I think sometimes in developing KPIs, we can reflect back and come up with the KPI. Jerrica and I both said this on our call the other day that for new hires, we're expecting them to have a house in contract by day 45. So for me, that's a KPI in onboarding that if they haven't, and I see that, then I need to be aware. And we actually go through that because we do a review at each 30 days. So it says, here's your KPIs for the past 30 days. And here's where you performed. And that's where we're having conversations about the next 30 days. So it informs you for your action points when you have those.
For sure. And actually, days since last contract is one of the columns in our daily hustle board. That's a metric that we track even beyond onboarding because we want to know how often agents are getting contracts. That tells us where we can have a coaching conversation throughout the process and where, as operations people, we can support the sales team by either creating systems or training or even just identifying what that drop off is, or the tracking for it is a massive way to impact your businesses. Awesome. Well, thank you, Erin.
You're welcome.
So let's jump into some of the operations KPIs. So how many of you guys came here? Did anybody come here for a specific position that they were looking for KPIs for? Is there anybody who came here with something specific in mind that they want to drop in the chat? Anybody here because they don't know what to do with their executive assistant or their TC or their listing manager? You guys are all here for fun. Office managers, listing coordinators, transaction coordinators. Awesome. Yeah, these are great. These are really common KPIs that we hear. So again, this starts with, I like to start with the business plan. Now, again, you may not always have a business plan in place, but if you're trying to find something to measure for your transaction coordinator, I first like to ask, is there a strategy in our business plan that they can contribute to? So that they're on board with the team goals. That maybe is like I said, outside of transactions. Maybe it's updating contact information in the database post-closing, or making sure that their home anniversary and their closing date is recorded in the database, right? Those can be a KPI or a metric that you guys are using, the number of closings recorded, the number of past clients that have complete contacts in the database by your own definition. So that's an example. Does anybody have any TC KPIs that they're currently using? So we have some of the usual ones, right? Like tracking the number of referrals that they ask for, right? Number of times they asked for a referral, that would be the leading indicator. The lagging indicator could be the number of referrals that they received, If you guys wanted to track one or the other, you could. If you were trying to improve the skill set of your transaction coordinator, you might track both. So that way you could see an improvement over time as you coach them through asking for referrals.
Yeah. We expect our TC and listing manager to have conversations with the clients each week. So we've tracked, have they touched base with every single client, yes or no? And then one of the lagging ones we were discussing is like, how could we measure if that's successful? Because our goal is that the client is never waiting or asking a question that we could have told them. And so this is kind of a flip-flop, but measuring like how many clients called in and what's the number we want to keep that under, right? It could be something like that. Like we want only 2 clients to call in with questions per week because we've predicted all of their other needs beyond that.
I love that. I think that's super smart. Another one that I've had previously for transaction coordinators on my team. So in Rhode Island, we have this lovely process called smoke certifications where the fire marshal has to provide a certificate to be able to close on the property. And to streamline the closing process for us, our team just started paying for them. And in the listing agreement, it states that we will be reimbursed for it at closing. And so we had, in order to increase our profitability, so one of our strategies for that year, our priorities for that year was increasing our profitability, and tracking and receiving the smoke certification reimbursements was the way that our transaction coordinator was contributing to the bottom line of our business. And it was super awesome because at the end of the year, she had her number and she actually paid for the OpsBoss retreat with the number that she increased our profitability by, which was so cool. So there's lots of creative ways that you guys can create incentives for your operations team to be able to do stuff like that also.
Depending on, I know some of you have your own marketing people and sometimes marketing pieces are under you or events are. We've had leading indicators around events and then lagging as well. And so leading might be how many attendees or how many touches are sent out to the database, and lagging could be how many referrals. So we had where we wanted 5 referrals from every single event. And so that was something we could track and say, okay, 1 is the marketing person or the TC doing all those things. And then 2 is what our method, is it working, and evaluating that in our conversations and our one-on-ones.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some KPIs that you guys have used for listing managers? So I know listing managers was another one that came up for you guys. Anybody have any metrics currently for their listing managers?
This is not super creative, but we've had keeping the task current because our listing manager is part-time. So whenever she's doing the task, obviously in the listing role, they're really timely of activating the listing on the day and time, making sure we have the client's conversations. And so that was one that we see, because sometimes you might even identify the person and say, this is important for them. This is something we want to work on. And so that's one we've had exist for her. There was another time where we're like, hey, listings need revamped. So who's feeling that right now, right? The market has changed. Everything needs to be different. So it could be creating so many processes per month. That was a KPI we measured for her to say, hey, we want you to be creative, go out and go above and beyond. And another one could be communication in regards to communicating about seller reports. I know a lot of you guys do those market reports about what's going on. So did every client receive that out of whatever frequency you identify?
Yeah, absolutely. And Luann's actually posting some really great ones too, right? How number of listings that went live on time, keeping costs within a certain percentage of a bid. I love that. So for those of you guys who are maybe doing staging or repairs before listings go live, and are responsible for coordinating that process, those are some things that could be tracked for sure. I think some other things for listings specifically would be like number of open houses that have been hosted. How many places were the open houses posted? What are the different places that the open house got marketed? Things like that you guys could do to kind of turn into an additional responsibility that the listing manager could do. So one thing that we had all of our client care track across listing managers and transaction coordinators was also gifts sent. So we were really big on gifting to our clients and loving on our database. So number of gifts sent was also a KPI that we would often track. And that was helpful because we also wanted to know how many referrals and things were being received from those gifts, right? Was it actually contributing to the actual outcome that we were hoping for, which was more referrals and repeat clients in our database? So then we were using that KPI to kind of track and connect those 2 things together.
Yeah, one other thing for listing manager too is we've tracked reviews received during the listing process. So we have it
Love that.
integrated for the listing manager to be asking for the reviews because they go live, they think their house looks amazing. We want to capture the review then. And so that's like an extra kudos to her when they come in before they get to closing, before they even go pending.
Yeah, I love that. What about just some general KPIs that can be tracked around listings, period? Like, what about the actual act of tracking what's happening with our listings? What are you guys tracking for performance indicators for your actual listings? Days on market. Yep, number of offers, number of showings. Totally. Yep. We also used to track inquiry calls, like how many calls did we get that didn't actually schedule a showing or didn't actually turn into anything. They just called to ask a question and then maybe didn't get the answer that they were looking for because we wanted to show that full scope of activity.
Yeah,
If you-
Jerrica, we communicate out our marketing efforts. So how many impressions on social media, how many leads did we generate on our different ads? And then I love the number of showings because we actually show them how their average compares to others at the same price point. So depending on if your MLS allows that, we always will then show them and say, hey, we're outperforming the average for your price point in your area.
Love that. That's a great one.
So
we have one giant spreadsheet. So we have a question that just came in. Do we have one giant spreadsheet with a ton of tabs for all of our KPIs? My answer is no. Hannah, what's your answer?
my answer is no also.
So they kind of live in their respective places according to where they are. So I'm a really big believer that your system should do all the trackings for you. I don't really believe in like manual entry or like any of that kind of stuff, reporting numbers or any of that. There's a couple numbers that can't be tracked within the systems, right? So they kind of live within their respective systems and I go find them accordingly. I may compile them into some sort of report if we're reporting out quarterly or monthly on them, but they tend to live wherever they are existing in the business. So for example, our listing KPIs may be within our listing system, right? Versus our sales KPIs are in the sales system.
Yeah, so similar, except the only thing I would say is different is sometimes I don't like automation because I can feel the numbers and I can digest them better when I have to manually input them. So there's sometimes that like even on my personal net worth tracker, I could like auto do that through a system, but I like to go and like log into every single website. So I would say do what works for that piece, but be efficient, right? It doesn't take me too much time, but that's part of my evaluating the KPI option. Your CRM is probably going to do a lot of these for you. And then like Jerrica said, you might need to translate them into another area to do so. And then by department, like my ISA and I have our own whole lead like tracking system with all these conversions that would overwhelm the rest of the team. And I never show it to anyone else, but she and I meet about that monthly and can dig into what that means for where we want to spend money, how she's doing at her job, etc. Our ops team has a spreadsheet. We talk about that in our monthly meetings. So it's really who needs to see the information. A lot of us on here are probably the data nerds, so we want to make sure that in those numbers we're conveying what we need to the group that is being involved in that discussion.
Yeah, some KPIs never see the light of day. And that's where Hannah was going back, right? Of like, is this ancillary data or is this like, information that we actually need? So you guys may be tracking things that never actually come to fruition. But I always like to have a little bit of extra data because it's helpful for me. I know I have a client recently that was trying to make her team feel really motivated and excited. And I said, well, how can we find some sort of metric that we can present to the team that makes you guys look and feel good, even though you may be down on your numbers? What's something that we can do? And so I actually asked her to go measure the pace of the market. So I said year over year, number of sales in your area, right? So let's say last year it was, I'm just going to use simple numbers. Okay. Let's just pretend last year in all of MLS, there were 100 sales. And this year in all of MLS, there are 50 sales, right? So there was a 50% decrease. Does that make sense to everybody? So now go to your team. Last year, your team did 50 sales, but this year your team did 100 sales. So you have a 50% increase. So therefore you're outpacing the market, right? So that's like a metric that you guys could use. That's actually a metric that I like to have the sales manager, the director of operations, COO, those are some great metrics and KPIs that leadership can own to make sure that the strategies that they're enacting to move the business forward are actually working.
Absolutely.
Hannah, what other KPIs do you use for your leadership team or for your director of operations, COO?
Yeah. Well, so I do a lot around the P&L, so finances, so figuring out what are the different categories that we want. Like we look at what's our cost of sale that has to do with our sliding scale for recruitment, and do I have enough agents at each level? We look at our net, and we have a giving goal, and so I track that and report that back to the team. So those are all areas. Recruitment is a big one, and we track all the different steps, so exploratory call onto KPA and future self. Um, if we look at our GPS, I actually had pulled up my scorecard because we've had it for our ops team for the past 3 years. It's different. So one of the ones you mentioned, Jerrica, was like database. So absolutely what the example you gave is one we did. The team, we were like, we're going to fix this messy database once and for all. And there were like 17,000 contacts. And we divided it between all of us. And every month we'd update on how many we had gone through and cleaned up, validated their data, marked them if they were complete. And so sometimes it's fun if you guys think through like, okay, I can't track all of these things. That's fine. Pick one and make it like your battle cry for the year. So that every time we met, we were so excited. And I was kind of bummed when we got the project done because I'm like, I'm not sure I can beat that. Like that was super fun to celebrate and get to track the progress. Almost like when a company's fundraising, right? You can see that there. So the KPI can be implemented in any of those ways. Agent referrals, how many we have brought in, how many we're winning, appointments, reminder set, how many times we've posted on social media. Any of those could be examples depending on what your role is and what you're responsible for.
Yeah, I love that. A lot of my KPIs tend to be competing against ourselves. I really love increase, decrease data. I'm sure you guys can tell. So I like a lot of my KPIs to be like a certain conversion rate or a certain percent increase quarter over quarter or month over month. Because I want to see that gradual increase that's happening. And I think that's really important too, especially as how many of you guys feel like your real estate markets are becoming more seasonal? Anyone feel like all of a sudden winter is a little bit slower than it used to be before? It was just, if you guys haven't been in the business, or if you've been in the business since 2020, you guys have probably only seen just a pretty flat market that's the same every month of the year, right? But if you've been in the real estate industry before 2020, you're used to, this like seasonal market where there's some ebb and flow month over month. And so I like to be able to track the increase, decrease so that I can predict our seasonality again to know which direction we're going in, because direction is typically the main purpose. There's one, I want to see how quickly we're getting to where we're going, but I also want to see with the baby steps, because my KPIs are my smallest measurement, right? Most of mine are leading, so that I know if we're going in the right direction to achieve our result. Because I know if we get a certain number of new leads that my team will convert them. Conversion's not the problem, right? It's the number of leads that we get that becomes the problem. So what is the certainty that you can find, and how can you find a KPI that'll increase or feed the thing that you feel certain your team can do?
So Jerrica, let me throw a question at you because I'm thinking, what could the people be on here for that where they're like, this is hard, I can't track this. So what if I had a team that was super unhealthy and I just needed to focus on the culture? What are some KPIs that I could track within the business to improve the culture?
Ooh, I
She
love
doesn't
that.
know this question's coming, so.
I didn't know. And it's funny because like if Hannah knew me at all, which she does, she knows that I am not the culture queen.
How I gave you that question. I
No,
think
I'm
that's a
kidding.
hard way to measure
No, I
sometimes.
think it's good though. Like, you know what? I think there's some good things to measure the culture of the team. I think one, number of team meetings attended. I think that tells you if people are not showing up to your meetings, if people are not showing up to your team events, if your team is not physically in the office, right? Those are some things that can be an indicator that you could work on. Like, what are the things that we could do to bring everybody back together? It could be celebrations from the team, right? I actually had to have this. So this is actually kind of why I thought you asked me. I had to have a tracker for myself for how many times I celebrated or thanked somebody on my team. Because I am like head down going all the time that I forget to stop and tell people that they're doing a good job. That is a point of mine that is difficult. So I had to build a system and tracking around it to make sure that I recognized and acknowledged the people on my team to make sure that they felt good. And so that can be something that you can do. Touches to your team. How many times have you like for a while, I had I would just call a random person on my team just to check in. Like, oh, hey, I was just thinking about you. I just wanted to see how things were going, right? You could track those number of calls that you're doing. What about you, Hannah? Have you done anything differently?
Well, I've actually had the same plan, so apparently we have the same problems. Mine was called the Tin Man plan because the Tin Man has no heart.
Yeah.
So yes, it was calls. So making a call to a team member, making sure I've spoken to each of them within a week period if I don't have a meeting with them, and then a monthly face-to-face, whether it be lunch or coffee. And so that was something I could track and make sure I was getting all the team members in there. And that's something I could report to my leadership too, to say, hey, you've equipped me to manage the sales and ops team. And here's how I'm nurturing and building into them beyond the one-on-ones that we have.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also for those of you who have bigger teams or smaller teams, if it's just you and your rainmaker, how many times are you guys like sitting down and having a conversation? How many times are you guys meeting, right? How many priority meetings are you guys having? How many times are you just grabbing a cup of coffee to like connect with that person, right? If you have larger teams, how can you divide this amongst the leadership team? You take group A this quarter, I'll take group A next quarter, right? So that everybody's getting touched and everybody feels connected to the team itself. I love that. So I would love to know, as we're wrapping up, are there any ahas or anything that you guys are going to implement from this call? And you guys can come off mic or drop in the chat. And for those of you who have been in my classes before, you already probably know the next question, right? Which is, what are you guys going to implement? The culture KPIs. I love it. Tin Man plan. There you go, Hannah.
Apparently a lot of us have the same problem, guys.
I love it. KPIs for marketing. Awesome. Love it. Cool. Lots of good stuff. So what action are you guys going to take in the next 24 hours? Is anybody going to take a next action step? Create your KPIs. I like it. What about scorecards? Does anybody raise your hand? Anybody need to make a scorecard or some way for you guys to track and be able to see them? Love it. Don't get caught up in the perfection. How many of you like all your stuff to look pretty?
Sarah, I love that. A lot of times I'll take our 135 and then I'll add a tab to my 411 spreadsheet and put my trackers over there. Cause then I'm like, okay, even if I don't show anyone, it helps me to know how I'm doing on our team GPS and leading everyone.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you guys all so much for joining us today. I hope you all got something fun out of nerdy Hannah and I talking about numbers and KPIs.
I know. It's our
We're
favorite
happy
part of
to
the
talk
day.
about them anytime, just in case anyone was wondering. I won't volunteer Hannah, but I'm pretty sure that we're pretty happy to have this conversation whenever.
Yeah, you guys can message us on Facebook or however it is. I would also encourage you to, if you're not sure on a KPI and you want to toss it around, put it into our Be a Boss group. I think that's a great way to get some feedback from others or to come up with ideas if you're struggling in an area.
Yep, absolutely. Love it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. See y'all.